The chamber is thick with silence, not the peaceful kind, but the kind born from rot and sweat and centuries of breath, trapped beneath wooden beams. A rat scuttles across rush-strewn floors, its claws whispering secrets older than the house itself. You shiver, not from cold, but from the sour stench clinging to your skin, a perfume of smoke, meat, and unwashed sorrow. Outside, the night is ink-thick and rain-slick, but in here, the world is warmer, and far more cruel. You haven't bathed in weeks. Neither has your mother, neither has the queen. And still, life presses on, toothless, grimy and teeming with ghosts who forgot the smell of soap. What would it feel like to live in a world where cleanliness is a sin of the rich? If this story makes your skin crawl or your heart ache for another time, stay with me. Like candlelight in a darkened lane, your presence warms the silence. Would you have endured the filth, or faded into it? The air greets you before the light does. Thick, humid, sour, it presses down upon your lungs like a woolen shroud left too long in the rain. The scent is not unfamiliar. You know it well. It is the smell of 100 nights without washing, of damp linens soured by breath and sleep, of chamber pots not yet emptied, and beyond that, the richer aromas of grease-soaked meat, perfumed hair oils, and rosewater mingling desperately with rot. You are not in a stable, you are not in a barn. You are in the heart of a royal palace, where kings once dined and courtiers danced, and still the walls weep with sweat and the floorboards cradle old dirt like memory. There is no such thing as cleanliness here, only the mask of it. If you find yourself lost in this moment, touched by its strange beauty or its quiet horror, linger a little longer. Let the past hold your hand. Subscribe if you'd like to keep walking with me. Have you ever smelled something so strong it changed how you saw the world? The straw beneath your body crackles faintly as you stir. It's cold, the kind of cold that slips between your bones and settles there, making its home behind your knees and under your ribs. But you do not rise just yet. To move is to face the room and the day beyond it. Around you, the others still sleep. A heavy snoring rises from the cot nearest the hearth. Old Thomas, the senior manservant, with breath like spoiled onions and a memory full of gossip. Across from him, Joan curls into herself, her hair a nest of shadowed curls, her apron stained from yesterday's stew. The fire has gone out. The embers are cold and ashen. A rat scurries along the far wall, undisturbed by your presence. It is as much a servant of the court as you are. The palace is not yet awake, but it stirs like a beast in its den, slowly blinking into life. You pull on your shoes, stiff with dried mud and unspoken things. You splash a few drops of stale lavender water onto your collar, not to cleanse, but to distract. Scent is a lie you tell the world, and in this palace, everyone lies. You step into the corridor, and the smell changes. Here, the air grows warmer, heavier. The scent of meat thickens. Boiled, beef, spiced pottage, dripping fat clinging to the rushes underfoot. The rushes are meant to mask the odor, to keep things pleasant, but they do not. They hide old food, vomit, the remains of past feasts ground into straw. The smell has depth, like layers of oil paint, one atop the other, forming something grotesque and untrue. Servants flit through the halls, eyes down, breath shallow. You pass a young boy carrying a pail sloshing with slop. His face is pale, his hands raw from scrubbing. You nod, and he nods back, the silent language of those who serve. The royal kitchens are beginning to wake. Somewhere below, a fire has caught. You hear the hiss of grease on iron. Beyond the scullery lies the queen's wing, hushed and perfumed, but not clean. The stench is more deceptive here. Powdered hair and dried rose petals. Starched ruffs crisp with sweet starch and sweat. You pause at the base of the stairs and glance up toward the chambers above. You think of her, Elizabeth, the Virgin Queen. The air around her will be stitched with incense, her robes laced with perfume from Italy or the Low Countries. And yet, beneath it, you know the truth. She has not bathed in many weeks. Perhaps months. She believes, like many, that water brings sickness, that to open one's pores is to invite death. Instead, her skin is wiped with cloth soaked in vinegar. Her gown's aired, not cleaned. Her body is shrouded not in cleanliness but in image. You do not blame her. This is the way of things. A bell rings once, low and sombre. It is the call to morning duties. You turn and begin the path toward the royal privy chambers, where chamber pots must be emptied. Before the courtiers stir, the hallway narrows. The scent sharpens. You lift the lid of the first pot. The heat of it surprises you. Fresh, you empty it into a slop bucket, eyes watering, nose resigned. This is the most intimate labor in the world, to touch what kings leave behind. And yet, no one speaks of it. Cleanliness is shameful here, a private yearning, an impossible standard. As you pass the tapestry of St. George, you pause. His sword is raised, triumphant, his cloak swirling like smoke. You wonder if he ever stank in his armor, if he ever longed for soap and silence. You shake the thought away. A commotion rises from the main hall. A nobleman has arrived. His boots leave trails of manure across the flagstones. A servant rushes behind him with herbs scattering thyme and mint in his wake. The smell does not go away. It mingles. And soon, no one notices. You return to your room. As the palace fully wakes, the halls fill with the sound of footfalls, the swish of skirts, the murmurs of gossip and hunger. The great house exhales its filth into another day. You lie back upon the straw. The air around you is warm now, but not clean. Never clean. You close your eyes and breathe. They crackle underfoot, not with crispness, but with the tired sigh of damp, rotting things. Rushes, once green and sweet-smelling, now lie browned and beaten, flattened into the wooden floorboards of your master's hall. Their scent is one of decay laced with rosemary, of rat droppings masked with mint, of ancient spills disguised by petals long turned to mulch. You stoop down, broom in hand, and your fingers brush the grime trapped beneath, a paste of ash, grease and forgotten meals. You do not grimace. This is not new. This is your morning. In this world, the floor is not something to be walked upon lightly. It is a graveyard of crumbs, broken comb teeth, and mouse bones. It holds secrets of coughs covered by coughs, of ale spilled in rage, of sickness carried on the soles of clogs. Every home keeps its own history in its rushes, and in Tudor England, few histories are clean. The cottage smells of damp wool and old onions. A single window lets in a shaft of grey light, revealing the dust dancing gently in the hush. The hearth is lit, just barely, and the fire coughs smoke instead of warmth. You sweep the floor carefully, more out of ritual than hope. The rushes were last replaced when, you try to recall, perhaps when the baby was born, a winter ago now. Or was it when old Nan died? Either way, the freshness has long since gone. The rushes no longer scent the room, they mask it. Your mistress, Margaret, stands by the table. She is wrapping the last of the bread in cloth, her fingers red from cold and cracked where the skin splits at the knuckle. She is not old, not yet, but life has aged her skin in places her years have not reached. A pale girl with a dry cough stirs in the corner, tangled in a blanket stiff with use. Margaret hushes her softly, brushing a hand over her brow, the motion tired but full of care. She needs warming, she says quietly, mostly to herself. You nod. But you both know warmth is a luxury now. The coals are dear, the firewood nearly gone, and the air outside holds a dampness that clings to the bones. The rushes used to be clean. When they were first laid down, they were gathered from riversides and marshes, cut carefully, dried, and scattered across the floors with sweet-smelling herbs. Lavender, if one could afford it. Chamomile, tansy, even little flecks of mint or marjoram. That was the dream, to have a floor that smelled like a meadow. But the dream never lasted. Now the floor beneath your feet is thick with forgotten spills, gravy hardened to black, fat gone waxen, a puddle of something that might have been ale once. The rushes are not just beneath your shoes, they are beneath the family, beneath the cradle, beneath the chair where Margaret's husband once sat before the sickness took him. The layers grow, and no one speaks of it. There is no shame, only survival. The broom you use is little more than tied twigs. You push it through the rushes, and a small clatter breaks the silence. Bit of bone, mouse, or bird, it's hard to say. You pick it up with the tips of your fingers and drop it outside, into the narrow alley behind the house, where the chickens peck at anything that moves. A neighbor calls a greeting, a man named Alwyn with tobacco-stained teeth and a constant limp. He carries a bucket of slops toward the village pit, his boots trailing a ribbon of brown behind him. He waves, and you wave back. Wind smells better today, he offers. And he's not wrong. The frost from the night before has frozen the worst of the privy stench, and the breeze carries only a dull bitterness, rather than the pungency of last week's pig slaughter. Back inside, Margaret has lit a candle for the saints. Its scent is barely perceptible, a faint tallow smoke rising like a prayer. You step past her to sweep beneath the table, and your hand brushes something hardened into the rushes. Vomit, maybe, from when the boy had fever last month. It hasn't been touched since. No one mentions it. The girl coughs again, a dry rattle like parchment being torn in slow hands. Margaret winces, pulling the blanket higher. Doctor said it's just the season, she murmurs. The air's heavy with it. You nod again. But you know, like she does, that the season is not to blame. The fleas are thick. You've found them on the girl's scalp. Even in the cradle, the brush is no match for them. The dirt clings to the body, no matter how often one changes shirts, if there are shirts to change. Outside, the church bell tolls. A funeral, again. You cannot help but wonder what the floor in that house looks like. How long since their rushes were changed? How much of their grief is soaked into straw? You finish sweeping. The pile you gather is small, but full. Crumbs, threads, a sliver of glass, and a blackened nail. You scatter it outside, where the chickens blink at you in confusion. Then you return inside, and sit by the hearth. Margaret offers a bit of broth, warm, barely, but kind. The bowl is cracked, mended with wax. The broth tastes of bone and water, but it fills your stomach just enough to keep your thoughts slow, and that is the secret, isn't it? Not to be clean, but to be slow enough not to notice. As dusk settles, the fire struggles against the dark. The rushes hold the scent of the day, broth, smoke, filth, and underneath it all, the faintest trace of rosemary from months ago, still holding on. The water shimmers in the wooden basin like glass caught in breathlight, still, expectant, and strangely accusing. You kneel before it, not to touch, but to observe. It is winter, and the chill in the air has crept through the cracks in the wattle and daub, through the seams in your sleeves, and into your very bones, and yet, you hesitate. The basin is filled with clean water, drawn fresh from the stream that hasn't yet frozen, but to bathe in it, to open your skin to that elemental force, would be an act of recklessness, not relief. You recall what the old ones say. Bathing lets the bad air in. It loosens the humours, stirs the bile, invites fevers through the very pores meant to protect you. Sweat is good. It seals the body. Water, they warn, does the opposite. Water is temptation, a soft, deadly seduction. Instead, you reach for a square of cloth, rough-woven linen, yellowed with age, scented faintly of ash. You dip one corner into the basin and begin to wipe your arms, brisk strokes, meant to encourage warmth, not cleanliness. You scrub until your skin flushes red, and the heat comes not from the water, but from friction. It is not the kind of cleansing you dream of, but it is enough. It must be. A knock at the door. You rise quickly, cloth still in hand, and open it to reveal him, the physician's apprentice. Barely more than a boy, with a stained leather pouch slung across his shoulder and a look of permanent unease in his eyes. He says the physician will see you now. You follow. The leech doctor's house smells of boiled herbs and candle grease, of something sweet gone sour. He is old, not in years, but in bearing, stooped from hours over tinctures and tones. His hands are stained with ink and something darker. He does not greet you with warmth. He rarely does. You've come for instruction, he says, not asking. You nod. He gestures to the stool, and you sit. A woman lies nearby, face beaded with sweat, lips pale and trembling. She moans softly, lost in some private pain. The doctor places a hand to her forehead and mutters about bad air, bile, and imbalance. Her mother washed her in river water, he says, as if that explains everything. You glance at her, her hands twitching, her eyes rolling beneath the lids, and feel the fear bloom in your gut. This is what happens when one forgets the order of the body. Water is not healing, it is disturbance. The physician opens a jar and dips 2 fingers into a pungent mustard mixture. He spreads it across the woman's chest, thick, grainy, yellow, and then covers it with a cloth. Poultice to draw out the fever, he claims, to make her sweat it through, not to purge the illness, but to coax it from the skin like a reluctant ghost. Would you bathe your hearth fire to make it stronger? He asks, without looking at you. You do not answer. You are meant to learn, not to question. The doctor prepares a small leech for the woman's arm, slides it from a glass jar, its body squirming and wet. It latches quickly as if hungry. He watches it swell with satisfaction. There, he murmurs. Balance. You think of the basin at home, of the water left untouched, of your mother warning you as a child. Only wipe, never soak. She would heat stones in the fire and place them near your bed to warm the air, never trusting water to do what sweat could. You thought her old-fashioned. Now, you are not so sure. The physician bids you help him prepare another tincture, a combination of ground rose petals, vinegar, and burnt alum. It is to be applied behind the ears, to fend off the sickness, not to clean, but to scent, to trick the body into thinking it is safe. Later, he shows you a dried herb, kept in a pouch of lambskin. Angelica, he whispers. Worn at the neck, it wards off the plague. The scent is strong, earthy and peppery. You are told to boil it into a tea, but not too often. It can turn the blood. Outside, the sun has begun to fall. The streets are heavy with mist. You walk home slowly, past houses shuttered tight, past children with red cheeks and bare feet, past a man coughing into the folds of his cloak. You think of the water in your basin, of how you longed once to submerge yourself entirely, to feel warmth, not from sweat or scrubbing, but from immersion, from letting go. But you won't, not tonight, perhaps not ever. Instead, you return to your hearth, warm the cloth again, and wipe behind your ears with vinegar. You mutter a prayer to the Virgin, you breathe shallowly, in case the air carries death, and you sleep without dreaming of rivers. The chamber glows with candlelight, warm, golden, forgiving, but the air is heavy, saturated with a dozen perfumes that dance and clash like rival courtiers in silence. You step softly across the embroidered carpet, careful not to disturb the delicate hush that clings to the Queen's presence like a second gown. The scent of rose oil and orris root fills your nostrils, thick as fog, masking everything underneath, including the truth. She sits tall upon her cushioned chair, spine straight, gaze fixed on the mirror before her. The Virgin Queen, her red gold wig is being arranged by careful hands, her ruff lifted and restarched by trembling fingers. You are not the closest attendant, only one of many who move in the periphery, but you are near enough to see the places where the glamour frays, the cracks in the paint, the shadow in the fold of her neck, the place where the powder meets the skin. The powder is thick, white lead, they call it. It is applied layer upon layer until her face is less a face and more a mask, a sculpture of purity, hiding the weathered truth beneath. Her cheeks are blushed with vermilion, her lips lined with cochineal, but no one speaks of the sores that come with it. No one dares. Her skin has not touched water in weeks. It is not neglect. It is doctrine. To bathe is to expose oneself, to illness, to chill, to the suspicion of weakness. Instead, the Queen is wiped down with cloths steeped in wine, vinegar, and herbs. Her body is never soaked. Her hair, when her own, was powdered rather than washed, and perfumed heavily to keep lice at bay. Her gowns, so heavy with brocade and embroidery, are brushed, not laundered, changed only when absolutely necessary, and kept in great wooden chests that reek of camphor and cloves. You assist the elder lady in preparing a sachet of crushed lavender and marjoram to be sewn into the Queen's sleeve. It is not for beauty, but for protection. Scent wards off sickness. A sweet nose is a safe one. Nearby, a young maid lifts the Queen's petticoat. You glimpse the layers beneath, shift upon shift, each yellowed with time. She does not flinch. She does not seem to notice. Her dignity does not lie in what is clean, but in what is unseen. Her Majesty wishes to be fragrant today, the mistress of the wardrobe announces softly. The French ambassador arrives by dusk. You prepare the water for scenting, not for washing. Heated wine, into which you place dried petals, a curl of orange peel, a drop of civet oil, The smell is overwhelming, heady and dark. It does not cleanse, it cloaks. A ritual of olfactory armor. The queen lifts her chin as her throat is dabbed with rosewater and musk. Her expression does not change. But you see her eyes, briefly, flick toward the window where the fog is pressing against the glass. Somewhere beyond that fog is a garden. Somewhere beyond that garden, a river. And somewhere beyond that, a world that still knows what rain feels like on bare skin. You wonder if she remembers the last time she bathed. There are rumors that she once washed in milk and honey, that her body was rubbed with cloth spun from Italian silk, then dusted in crushed pearls, that her chamber was once scented with lilies flown in from France. You do not know what is true. You do not ask. Later, you assist in lacing her sleeves. Your fingers move swiftly, expertly. You smell the fabric as you lean close, a strange bouquet of lavender, sweat and something sharper beneath. The queen says nothing. She watches her reflection with the practiced calm of one who has learned to live as symbol more than self. When she rises, the room stills. She walks slowly, every step measured, every fold of her gown deliberate. Those who serve her bow. You do too. She does not speak. She does not need to. Behind her, two older women carefully lift the edge of her train. You follow, eyes cast low, through the corridor that leads toward the great hall. The scent of sweet herbs follows her like a cloak, but as you walk, you catch another smell beneath it. Faint, human, earthy. She is no goddess. She is a woman, and though her body is untouched by water, her skin is not untouched by time. As night falls, you return to your own corner of the servants' quarters. Your hands still smell faintly of civet oil. You wipe them on your apron and sit by the fire, listening to the crackle of logs and the quiet breathing of those already asleep. You think of her, of the mask she wears each day, of the perfumes that become her armor, and you wonder if, when the lights are dimmed and the mirror turned away, she ever longs for soap and silence, for water and warmth, for something simple and clean. But she cannot. Not anymore. She is not allowed to be clean. She is only allowed to be seen. The morning mist clings to your skin like breath from a mouth too close. You step into the alley behind your lodgings and are met, at once, by the stink. It greets you before the light, as it always does, low and sour, thick as spoiled ale, and layered with something sharper beneath. You pull your shawl over your nose, but it is too late. The stench has already passed into you, into your hair, your clothes, your very breath. This is not a momentary nuisance. This is the smell of the town, woven into the timber, soaked into the mud, carried by every breeze. The cobbled lane ahead is slick with filth. Night soil, the polite word for human waste, glistens where the bucket boys have missed their mark. Pigs root freely along the edges, snuffling through the refuse, unbothered by what they find. Children dart past you barefoot, their laughter ringing sharp against the morning hush. Their feet slap in puddles that are not water. You look away. This is no slum. This is not the edge of the kingdom. This is the heart of a Tudor town. You pass the butcher's stall, not yet open for trade. Flies already circle the hanging carcass of a pig, half-skinned and steaming faintly in the chill. Blood seeps from beneath the door. The gutters are narrow here, shallow and slick with grease. You step lightly, careful not to splash. At the corner stands a barrel, rainwater, collected from the slanted thatch above. It is used for washing dishes, hands, sometimes even wounds. You peer inside. The water is cloudy, with bits of moss and insect wings floating in lazy circles. A woman dips a pail into it, unfazed. This is the best water around. The well, they say, draws too close to the old cesspit. You remember when the well was clean, or seemed to be, but the town has grown, and the pits have filled, and no one speaks of it now, unless they're sick, and by then, it is too late. A baker's boy stumbles past you with an armful of loaves. His apron is clean, but his hands are dark beneath the nails. He offers a grin, missing 2 teeth, and vanishes down an alley where the chimney smoke turns the air to wool. You follow the street toward the lower market. The stench thickens as you descend. Here, the privies are shared, narrow, wooden sheds with holes above barrels, or pits. You know them well. They are never emptied fast enough. Flies rise in clouds when the door creaks open. The floors are slick, the air inside close and wet. No one lingers. Behind the market is the ditch, Not a sewer in name, but one in practice. It runs open, a slow stream of black water winding between houses. People toss refuse into it without shame. Spoiled meat, broken pots, the body of a dead dog. Once you saw a man toss in something wrapped in cloth, heavy with silence. No one asked, no one will. The water smells worse in summer, when the heat thickens it, and the flies double. But even now, in the cold, the odor clings to the skin like smoke. You cross a footbridge slick with algae, gripping the rail for balance. Below, the water bubbles softly. A child points down and laughs. You do not look. The preacher shouts from a crate nearby, his voice raw with passion. He speaks of sin, of cleanliness of the soul, of the rot that begins in the heart. The crowd listens, nodding, but none speak of the rot beneath their shoe. You pause at the apothecary's door. Inside, jars gleam behind warped glass. Camphor, alum, vinegar, remedies for fever, poultices for boils, scents to ward off plague, but not water, never water. That would invite more harm. The apothecary steps out to sweep his threshold, scattering ashes to absorb the damp. He nods at you. His hands are stained with oil, his face pale and hollow-eyed. Still the stink rises, he mutters. And still the king does nothing. You nod back and keep walking. Up the lane, you see a house with fresh rushes at the threshold. A sign of mourning. Someone has died there. Perhaps of old age. Perhaps of the water. It is hard to say now. Death here smells no different than life. You pause to drink from your flask. Wine, watered down. Safer than the stream. Safer than the well. It burns faintly as it goes down. A welcome sting. A child offers you a flower, a scrap of yarrow tied with string. You take it, press it to your nose. For a moment it drowns out the filth. Just a moment. You pass a man cleaning fish. The entrails slop into a bucket already filled with blood and bones. He nods to you, and you nod back. There is no shame here, only rhythm. By the time you return to your dwelling, the mist has lifted. The sun cuts through the cloud like a dull blade. It reveals everything. The filth, the stains, the wet footprints. You open your door, step inside, and close the world out behind you. The stench follows. Her hands are crimson with cold, mottled where the blood tries and fails to return. The skin is cracked at the joints, thickened from years of lie, frost and scalding rinse. She does not flinch as she plunges the cloth into the water, now grey with use and grit. Instead she hums, a low rhythmic tune that sits in her throat like memory. You kneel beside her, the river sucking at your boots, and you watch the motion of her arms. Up, ring, slap. Up, ring, slap. Each rhythm a kind of penance, each movement older than words. She is a widow. She tells you this not in grief, but as one might name a place they once visited long ago. Her husband was a culper, steady, kind, and gone with the sweating sickness in the year of the great frost. She has no sons, only daughters, grown now, scattered in service across the kingdom, and so she scrubs, for coin, for bread, for the whisper of heat in her bones that comes from labour, if not from fire. The river is shallow here. The current gentle, thin sheets of ice skim its surface in places untouched by feet or stone. The washing stones are worn smooth by generations. Thighs pressed, buckets balanced, skin scraped raw against the same cruel shapes. Around her, 3 other women work. Each wears layers patched and patched again. Their boots leak. Their laughter, when it comes, is sharp as icicles, and just as brittle. You are told to watch, not to help. Not yet. A pile of garments lies nearby, shirts stained with sweat, petticoats stiff with blood, a soiled apron with something darker at its hem. These do not belong to the washerwomen. They belong to the baker's wife, the blacksmith's niece, the steward's child. They belong to the town, and it is here by the river that the dirt is named and lifted. Not always entirely, never fully, but the woman beside you works with a bar of soap that smells faintly of tallow and lime. It is coarse. It burns the cuts in her fingers. She uses it sparingly, with reverence. Most of the work is done by the water and her will. She slaps a shift against the stone, the sound echoing through the chill air like a drumbeat. Behind her, A brazier struggles to stay lit. The coals hiss and sulk beneath a pot of warming rinse water, steam rising like ghosts with nowhere else to go. "You'll need to learn to grip with your whole arm," she says, not unkindly. "Your fingers won't last." You nod. The cold is already finding its way under your nails, turning them purple. Your breath curls in the air. Your back aches from crouching, and still she scrubs. There is talk among the women of the steward's latest child, born sickly, and of the merchant's wife, who was seen purchasing scented oil from the London cart. They mutter of waste, of vanity, of how no perfume will change what lies beneath. They know the truth of bodies, these women. They know what lingers in linen and refuses to wash away. One holds up a chemise and sniffs it, face souring. "Too long worn," she says. "Won't come clean this side of Easter." They laugh, but without mirth. Another woman pours a kettle of hot water into the rinse bucket. Steam blooms upward. They pass the shirts through it, one by one, as if baptizing them in heat. You wonder how many prayers are whispered over those buckets, how many sins are confessed in soap. You are handed a cloth, small, stained, already half frozen. You mimic the motion you've seen all morning. Up, ring, slap. Up, ring, slap. The cloth fights you at first. Your fingers, already numb, do not obey, but the rhythm catches. And for a few seconds, you forget the ache. You become part of the river's song. They take a break at midday, fingers curled around mugs of warm ale. Bread is passed hand to hand, torn roughly and shared without speech. You sit with them, steam rising from your skirts. The washerwoman speaks little, but when she does, her words carry weight. You can tell what kind of home it is by the stains, she says. What they eat, how they bleed, what they don't bother to wipe. You ask her how long she's done this. Long enough to stop dreaming about anything else. A shirt is torn in the rinse, too worn to hold. She mends it on the spot with coarse thread and teeth that hold the needle, while she knots the end. Her hands shake slightly, but the stitches are firm. She does not ask for thanks. No one does. By late afternoon, the pile is smaller, the river colder, and the wind sharper. The women begin to pack away their buckets, wring out their cloths, and fold the washed garments into oilcloth wraps. The fire is left to die. The stones are rinsed one final time, as if cleansing the act itself. The washerwoman nods at you. You'll come again tomorrow. It is not a question. You walk home with your fingers stiff and your back wet. Your apron clings to your thighs, and your boots slosh with each step. The smell of soap lingers faintly on your sleeves. Not enough to be called clean, but enough to remember the work. At home, no one notices. They see your red hands. They see the empty basket, and that is thanks enough. Smoke curls from the chimney like a lazy serpent, dissolving into the pale morning fog. The door is cracked open, not in welcome, but because the hinges are warped and the wood swollen with damp. You step inside the barber surgeon's shop, ducking your head, as the ceiling lowers to meet you. The air is thick with a bitter mix of boiled leeches, dried rosemary, and the metallic sting of blood barely scrubbed from old pine. Beneath it all lingers the staleness of sweat, not fresh, but old, baked into the room by years of pain and poultice. He stands near the hearth, sharpening a curved blade against an oil stone. His sleeves are rolled, revealing forearms furred with hair and freckled with old scars. His hands are large, cracked, steady. You've heard of him. He cuts hair and abscesses with equal precision, drains fevers and mends broken noses, pulls teeth and lops off fingers, depending on what the morning requires. Today, it will be boils. The patient sits on a stool, trembling. A merchant's apprentice, thin as a river reed and blotched with angry red swellings beneath the jaw. He breathes through clenched teeth as the surgeon steps close. No greetings, no small talk, only a hand on the shoulder and the wet press of linen soaked in sour wine against the boy's neck. A moment of pause. Then the blade. It slips through the skin with practiced ease. The boy gasps, eyes wide, hands gripping his knees to keep from striking out. The wound opens. Pus flows, yellow-white and warm. The smell floods the room. Rank, sick, sweet, unforgettable. You look away, pressing a cloth to your face. The surgeon says nothing. He works silently, efficiently, as though cleaning a pot or carving a roast. He presses the swelling, drawing out the last of the rot, and drops the cloth into a bucket already stained. Then, with fingers quick as thought, he packs the cup with goose grease and yarrow, binding it with clean rags. The boy slumps forward, shaking. The surgeon steps back, wipes his hands on his apron, and takes up the scissors. "Hair next," he says. "You are not here for a haircut. You are here to learn." The table in the corner is cluttered. Shears, razors, glass bottles labelled in a crabbed hand, strips of bandage curled like old leaves. A leech jar rests beside a bowl of darkened water. You lean close and see them, black, bloated, slow-moving creatures that writhe when the jar warms near the hearth. The surgeon lifts the jar with a grunt. "Fevered blood needs drawing," he mutters, as though reciting from memory. The next patient is older, a man with jaundiced eyes and tremors in his fingers. He does not resist as the surgeon ties off his arm and selects a leech. It latches quickly, its body pulsing with the rhythm of a hidden drum. You watch, half hypnotized. The blood rises, and with it, something ancient stirs in you, an understanding both instinctive and terrifying. This is how it has always been. The barber surgeon hums softly as he works. A hymn, perhaps, or the remnant of a lullaby forgotten in the mouth. He does not speak unless needed. Pain is not discussed. It is expected. A woman enters, holding a child. The girl's face is flushed, and her breath rasps with each inhale. The surgeon listens, then opens a pouch of dried herbs, thyme, lavender, betony. He mixes them into a pot with vinegar and instructs the mother to boil it and breathe the steam. Twice a day, he says, until the breath comes back. You ask him why no water to wash the skin, to cleanse the filth. He looks at you. For a long moment he does not answer. "Filth keeps the devil out," he says finally. "Clean skin is naked skin. Naked skin dies faster." He shows you his knives, some thin as quills, others thick and curved, like a butcher's blade. Each one has a story. This for scalpels, this for gangrene, this for cutting away the rot when it reaches the bone. They are wrapped in cloth and oiled each night, not for shine, but to keep them from rusting, to keep them ready. You notice the smell more now, not just of the shop, but of the people. Blood, breath, wool soaked with sweat, the oil in the surgeon's beard, the vinegar on the rags. None of it clean, but all of it necessary. He finishes with the child, sends the mother away with a warning. Keep her warm, no drafts. Spirits rise in cold air. You help wipe down the table. The rag is damp, and the smear it leaves behind is darker than before. You do not ask if it's clean. You already know the answer. Before you leave, he presses a pouch into your hand. "For the fever," he says. "If it comes," you nod, thank him, and step outside. The air hits you like a blow. You breathe in, but the scent of the shop clings to your throat. You cannot spit it out. You walk down the lane, boots thudding against the frozen mud, past shops and stalls and doorways, each with its own story of pain and blade and remedy. You do not yet know how deep filth can go, but you've begun to learn how it's carved out. She waits by the river's bend, where the current slows, and the reeds grow tall enough to hide a child. You spot her through the mist, bent-backed, wrapped in shawls that flutter like dying leaves, her silhouette crooked against the grey water. The villagers call her the water wife. Some say she is mad, others say she remembers too much. You are told not to speak with her, that she mutters nonsense and stirs up fear. But something draws you to her today, something in the hush of the morning, or in the way the fog clings to your ankles like a wisp. You step carefully down the muddy slope, boots sinking with each step. The ground here never dries. The earth is soft and sour, fed too long by runoff and ash. The air smells faintly of iron, of wet stone and riverweed. The water wife stands barefoot in the muck, eyes fixed on the water. She does not turn when you approach. "Too close to the bank," she says. Her voice is low, sanded down by years. It's deeper than it looks. You stop a few paces back. Say nothing. She lifts a hand, pale, shaking, the skin veined and translucent, and gestures toward the reeds. "That one," she says, "took a boy 3 springs ago. Went in for a frog. Never came out." You glance at the reed. It looks no different from the others. She finally turns to face you. Her eyes are pale blue, almost white, like river glass. There is something in them, not madness, not entirely, memory. "You think water makes you clean?" she asks. You hesitate, then nod, just slightly. She chuckles. A dry sound, brittle and strange. You think it washes sins away. You think the river forgives. You shake your head. You're not sure what you think. She turns again, crouching by a wooden pail, filled with dark water, floating within are strips of cloth, yellowed, ragged, glistening faintly in the dim light. Steeping herbs, she mutters. Wound wash, for the woman near the mill. You kneel beside her. She doesn't object. The herbs are bitter-smelling, tansy sage, and something peppery you don't recognize. She lifts a piece of cloth and wrings it out with knotted hands. Her fingers are warped by time, but strong still. The water drips into the mud with a hiss. Don't use river water raw, she says, voice low. It remembers everything that's bled into it. Everything poured, pissed, drowned or wept. You ask her if she's always lived here. She nods. My mother before me, her mother before her, all water wives. We keep the springs, know where the good ones are. Not all water's the same. She tells you of a spring deep in the woods, fed by stone and silence, hidden, holy. The water there runs clean, so clean it sings, but only the desperate find it, or the dying. You ask if she's ever been there. She looks away. It's not for me, she says. You watch as she ties the cloths into bundles and places them into a sack of oiled wool. She moves slowly, deliberately. The sky begins to shift above you, grey yielding to the faintest silver. A gull cries overhead. The waterwife stands and points downstream. 3 villages there, she says. All draw from that stretch. Every year the fevers come sooner. Every year more children die. No one listens. You ask why. She shrugs. Because filth is easier than change. Because they trust what's always been. You look at the river. It glides by, smooth and dark, untroubled on the surface. But you see now what lies beneath. Not just silt and stone, but memory, waste, grief, the slow rot of generations, poured into one endless current. She tells you of a girl once, young, clean, beloved, slipped while washing sheets. The river swallowed her without sound. They found her days later, white and full of silence. It takes who it wants, the waterwife says, especially the ones who come seeking purity. You offer to help carry her bundle. She allows it. You walk together toward the mill, the earth squelching beneath your steps. She speaks of old rites, of washing newborns in moonlit pools, of burying soap wrapped in cloth to banish illness, of whispering names into the steam rising from copper kettles. You ask if those things worked. She gives you a look, unreadable as fog. They gave people hope, she says. That's cleaner than any water I've known. At the mill, she delivers the herbs to a young woman with eyes rimmed in red. The child inside coughs weakly. The waterwife gives no instruction, only touches the woman's shoulder, and leaves. On the walk back, you ask if she ever bathes. Only when it rains, she says. That's the only water heaven still weeps clean. You reach the river bend again. She returns to her place among the reeds. You hesitate before leaving. Water is a gift, she calls after you. But gifts can bite. Don't forget. You nod. The fog begins to lift. And the river, ever hungry, flows on. The linen is rough against your skin. Not in a cruel way, but like an old truth that no longer asks to be questioned. You wear it day and night. A shift beneath your bodice. Your only constant in a world of soot and sweat. You change it, perhaps, when the moon turns full, or when the smell becomes unbearable even to your own nose. Until then, it clings to your body like a second skin, catching your breath, absorbing your worry, cradling the dirt you dare not acknowledge aloud. It is early morning. The hearth has not yet been stirred, and your fingers fumble through the chill to find the cleanest of the not quite clean. A camas laid across the rafters for 3 days, stiff now, with its own memory. You shake it, a small cloud of dust, ash, and old lye rises like incense. This is what passes for clean. In Tudor England, laundry is performance, not habit. Cleanliness is neither ritual nor luxury. It is a hope, pushed further down the lane, with every pail of grey water tossed into the street. The body is left to sweat, but linen bears the burden. You pull the shift over your head, wincing as it tugs at a patch of dry skin along your shoulder. Beneath your arms, the cloth is already yellowed, though it's been brushed with rosemary. No amount of scrubbing will change it now. only time and wear. You smooth the wrinkles, tie the laces, you feel no cleaner, only more presentable. Downstairs, the tailor works by window light. He is a quiet man, face lined like folded parchment, and hands that tremble slightly as he threads his needle. You've known him most of your life. He made your first apron, now he patches your mistress's gowns, working the same hem over and over again with patient, squinting eyes. He greets you with a nod. No words. There's comfort in that. The shop smells of wool and oil, with the sharper tang of vinegar from the pressing board. The kettle hisses quietly in the corner, its steam swirling into the chill. The tailor holds up a sleeve, eyes it, frowns. Too fine to last, he mutters. You don't need to ask. He's talking about a noblewoman's underdress. Delicate linen, so thin it tears with the weight of its own embroidery. He despises such work. It offends him. The pretense of wealth, stitched into something meant to lie hidden, soak up sweat, and never be seen. He sets the garment aside and begins work on a simpler shirt. Yours, a mending of a rent along the side seam. You watch him stitch. His hands move slower now, the threads occasionally snarled, but each stitch is firm, clean. You see how the fabric pulls together, the tear disappearing under his needle. He doesn't speak, but you feel the unspoken lesson. Linen can be forgiven, even if the skin beneath it cannot. Outside, a neighbor hangs shirts upon a line. They sway in the pale wind like surrendered flags. Some are stained at the cuffs, others stiff with old starch. You know each by sight, who wears them, how often they're washed, which stains come from stew and which from blood. The street speaks in laundry, if one knows how to listen. A small boy runs past, barefoot, clutching a bundle of cloth. A woman shouts after him, waving a rolling pin. The cloth slips from his arms, lands in a puddle, and sinks. He doesn't stop. The woman curses, loud and familiar. The tailor sighs. Another one lost. He reaches into a drawer and withdraws a strip of old linen, worn, but sound. He hands it to you without looking. For her, he says. She'll need it. You take it. The cloth is warm from the drawer and smells faintly of beeswax. A kindness wrapped in silence. Later you return home to find your own laundry stiff with the day's cold. You take it down slowly, folding each piece with care. Your fingers are raw from the wind. One shift is fraying at the collar, another has holes at the hem from mice. You'll mend them tomorrow. Maybe. You heat a brick near the hearth and wrap it in linen before placing it at your feet, beneath the blanket. The cloth muffles the heat, keeps the burn away, carries warmth into the hollows of your toes. This is what linen does. It holds, it shields, it weeps, silently. Before sleep, you brush your hair with the comb carved from horn. A few lice fall to the floor, unremarked. You draw your shift tighter across your chest and lie still, the fire dimming behind your closed eyes. The room smells of old starch and rosemary, of wool and skin and sleep, and the linen against your skin. It lies. It tells you you're clean. They wed beneath a sky the colour of pewter, in a village that has long since forgotten what freshness feels like. The scent of rain on soot clings to the thatch, and the streets bleed mud where pigs have rooted since dawn. You are among the guests. If guests they can be called, neighbours, kin, a few watchful children, with ribboned sticks in hand. The air smells of wet wool, boiled turnips, and the sour breath of celebration held in cramped quarters. But none of that matters now, not to them. The groom stands straight, though his boots squelch with every step. He wears a jerkin patched with care, his collar brushed with something that might once have been lavender. His hands are scrubbed raw and red, and the left one shakes slightly, not from nerves, but from the labour of the morning's firewood. His name is Thomas, and you have known him since he was barely tall enough to stir the hearth. He smells like smoke and lie and hope. The bride is Mary, a girl whose eyes always seem to carry the light of things not yet broken. Her gown is borrowed too long at the hem, cinched at the waist with a piece of twine wrapped in faded blue ribbon. Her hair is pinned with sprigs of rosemary and a single larkspur flower, plucked from the field beyond the dyer's pond. She steps forward barefoot, her feet stained from the stream where she washed them at dawn. Her cheeks are pink with cold and joy. The priest speaks quickly, breath steaming with each word. His robes are damp, and his book stained at the edges with wax and age. He does not pause for grandeur, He is used to weddings wrapped in weather and warmth. He says the words plainly, firmly, as pigs grunt in the distance, and a baby wails from under someone's shawl. When he says speak now or forever hold, the silence that follows is brief, not reverent, but practical. No one speaks. No one interrupts. There is no luxury in delaying love. They kiss. A murmur of approval rustles through the gathered crowd like dry rushes stirred by wind. Someone claps. A fiddle strikes up, badly, but earnestly, and the crowd begins to move, to dance in the narrow space between puddles and straw-covered ground. You follow them to the cottage, a low, smoke-darkened thing that breathes warmth, only because so many bodies have already gathered inside. The room smells of stew, sweat, and the faint tang of ale. A garland of herbs hangs over the doorway, and someone's old tapestry has been nailed to the wall to hide a draught. The table groans beneath the weight of cabbage pie, dried apples, and a goose roasted over the inn's fire, a gift from the bride's uncle. You eat with your hands. There are not enough spoons. Ale spills. Laughter echoes off the beams. The fire sputters, sending shadows darting across the room like silent dancers. You see Mary's smile across the table, teeth a little crooked, eyes bright with something deeper than cheer. It is not a perfect moment, but it is true. Later, they retreat behind a threadbare curtain, hung across the far corner of the room. You pretend not to hear the whispered words, the nervous giggle, the quiet rustle of cloth. Around you, the guests grow quieter. The fire dies down. Someone begins to hum an old ballad about river stones and everlasting love. You help gather the plates, rinsing them with rainwater from a barrel outside. The cold bites your wrists, but you are grateful for the air. The stench of bodies, of food and drink and wood smoke, has seeped into every fibre of your gown. Still, the night is kind. The stars blink through the clouds for the first time in days. You return inside to find the guests dozing, children curled beneath benches, a grandmother snoring softly with her arms wrapped around a jug. You see the newlyweds again, now by the fire, curled together on a mattress of straw and wool. Mary is asleep, head against Thomas's chest. His eyes are open. He meets your gaze, and for a moment, the room stills. There is dirt under his nails. His cheeks are unshaven, but he holds her like she is something clean, something sacred. Outside, the village slumbers in its grime. The gutters overflow with waste. The rushes on the floor grow dark with spilled ale and trampled grease. And yet, inside this cottage, in this moment, there is a kind of grace, not the grace of perfume or white linen, but the grace of hands that work, of lips that meet in honesty, of two hearts daring to beat together amid the filth. The fire pops. Someone stirs in their sleep. And in the quiet, you smell rosemary. It begins with a cough, dry, rasping, low, the kind of sound a tired man makes when clearing his throat after sleep. But it does not stop. It deepens, sharpens, turns wet. Within days it spreads through the narrow alleys, through shutters left ajar for air, through hands that pass coins, through breath. You hear it first from the baker's wife, who speaks of a boy fallen ill after helping to unload a cart from London, then from the cobbler, who says his apprentice grew feverish overnight and could not rise by morning. No one calls it by name, not yet. The word plague is a curse, a summoning. To speak it aloud is to invite it into the room. You walk the lanes with your shawl pressed to your nose. The air feels thicker, the gutters run darker. Doors begin to close during daylight. Windows are barred not to keep thieves out, but sickness in. No one touches, no one lingers, and yet the stench grows. It's not just the usual filth, not the pigs, not the chamber pots, not the middens. It is sweeter, stranger, a rotting beneath the rot, flesh gone soft, fever burning itself into the air. You smell it outside the apothecary's door, where the queue no longer forms, but waits at distance. You smell it at the churchyard gate, where the earth has turned too wet to dig graves quickly. Inside the tailor's shop, silence has settled like dust. His hands tremble more now, and he no longer bothers with fine seams. They won't be worn long, he mutters, as he patches yet another burial shroud. You ask about the herbs: marjoram, sage, rosemary, lavender, anything to hang in the doorway, to steep in water, to carry in a pouch at your breast. He gives you a bundle without charge. If it helps, he says, it helps. By the week's end, Chalk marks begin to appear on doors. A crude X hastily drawn, some marked by their own hands, some by those sent from the parish. You see one on your way to fetch water. You do not linger. The window above it is shuttered, but a flicker of candlelight betrays life inside or morning. The night soil man moves quicker now. He works earlier, avoids the main roads. You pass him once, his shoulders hunched, eyes hollow. His cart is fuller than usual. He does not speak. You begin to hear the bell. It is not the church bell, not the slow toll of ceremony. It is smaller, sharper, rung by a boy sent to walk the streets ahead of the dead cart. Bring out your dead, he calls, though often no one does. Too many are alone. Too many cannot carry. So the collectors go inside now. They wear cloths over their faces, gloves stiff with wax. They leave doors swinging open behind them. You see the cart once, just once. It passes your street in silence, save for the creak of wheels and the clatter of something that falls and is not retrieved. You glimpse a hand, pale and swollen, hanging limp over the edge. Flies follow like mourners. The priest stops visiting the sick. He writes prayers and passes them through windows. He lights candles on the chapel steps and leaves them burning all night. You pass him once, kneeling in the mud, hands red with wax, eyes bloodshot. He does not look at you. Inside your home, you boil vinegar, you scrub the lintels with ash. You sleep in your shift and burn your apron rather than wash it. You do not speak of the fever. You do not name the swellings. You watch your skin for signs, blotches, heat, tenderness under the arms. Each day is a coin flipped, each breath a question, and still the filth remains. The rushes are not changed. The chamber pots still slosh. The water still runs brown. Only now it is not just unpleasant. It is dangerous. You remember the water wife's warning. You remember her eyes. Water remembers, you said. Everything that's wept into it. You wonder what the town's water remembers now. At the chapel gate you pause. A small cradle sits abandoned, covered with a cloth. You do not lift it. You do not need to see. The cloth tells you enough. That night, you light a candle in your window. Not because it helps, but because someone might need to see it. Someone might still be walking, still breathing, still untouched. You sleep with the herbs at your neck. You do not dream. The well lies at the edge of the wood, past the hedgerows where brambles climb the bones of forgotten fences, and just before the stream that wanders toward the sea. You find it early, before the birds stir, while the mist still hangs low and silent as prayer. The path is trodden faintly, worn not by shoes but by memory. Women have walked this route for generations, some barefoot, some bleeding, all seeking something that might cleanse more than flesh. They call it holy, the well, not by the church's decree. There is no bishop's blessing carved into its stones, but by something older. It is ringed in moss, crowned with a wooden arch, barely held upright by ivy, and its waters are said to rise from deep earth untouched by sin or salt. You are not alone. They've gathered before the sun. Women wrapped in shawls, cradling infants, carrying jugs. One bears a candle flickering wildly in the soft breeze. Another clutches a scrap of cloth. A baby's bonnet, stiff with dried tears. A midwife stands apart, tall and silent, hands folded before her like folded wings. Her apron is stained in places no wash ever lifts. The silence between you all is not fear. It is reverence, as if any noise might call the wrong attention, might bring eyes that mock what the heart dares still believe. One by one, they step forward. The first kneels. She dips a small cup into the water, lifts it carefully, and pours it over her baby's head. The child wails, not from pain, but from shock, cold. The mother murmurs something too soft to catch. A name, a hope, a bargain. Then she steps back. Another woman approaches with a bundle wrapped in linen, too still to be living. She does not weep. She unwraps the cloth, dips her fingers into the well, and traces a circle upon the baby's brow. The midwife says nothing, but bows her head. You step forward last. You bring only your hands. You kneel by the stone rim and look into the water. It is clearer than you expect. You see your face reflected, tired, drawn, older than the years you've counted. Beneath that, the faint shimmer of something deeper. You lower your fingers in, let the cold wrap them like ribbons of ice. It doesn't feel holy. It feels honest. You scoop a handful and pour it over your forearm. The chill bites. The dirt lifts only slightly. But you feel something shift. Not a cleansing, a remembering. The midwife approaches. She crouches beside you, her joints cracking softly. They come here after the sickness, she says. Some think it cures. Some just want to do something. You ask her if it ever works. She doesn't answer right away. I've seen babes walk after this, she murmurs. I've seen others carried away in the same cloth they came in. She leans close, her voice gentler than the wind, but the well doesn't promise. It only listens. You remain a while after the others leave. The water no longer reflects anything but sky. The mist has lifted, and birds have begun their morning chatter. The sun strikes the top of the well's arch, catching the dew on the ivy like glass beads. You think of the women who knelt here before you, of the ones who never came back, of the babies who grew to curse the filth they were born into, and of the ones who never had the chance. The midwife lights a taper and sets it on a stone. It sputters, then steadies. You know, she says, once, they said a goddess lived here, long before the church bells rang. They'd tie bits of cloth to the tree, leave offerings, ask her to guard their womb. You look to the tree beside the well. Its branches are bare now, but a few weathered ribbons still hang, flapping gently in the wind. You tie one of your own, a strip torn from your sleeve, and say nothing. The midwife squeezes your shoulder, then turns and disappears down the path. You remain, watching the water, the light, the quiet. You know the well cannot clean the world, but it remembers, and sometimes that is enough. The shutters swing open with a clack, letting in the pale winter sun and the scent of cinnamon from the merchant's display shelf. You step into the shop cautiously, your boots squeaking on the polished wood, a rare smoothness beneath your feet, slick with beeswax and swept twice a day by the girl with the red ribbon in her hair. This is not a place for you, but you've been, and so you enter, keeping your eyes low and your hands to yourself. The merchant stands behind a counter carved with vines and cherubs, dusted daily, oiled weekly. He wears gloves even indoors, soft lambskin that crinkle when he moves the quill. Before him lies a ledger, pages inked with the looping strokes of a man who knows the cost of things in 6 currencies. He does not look up when you arrive. His attention is on the page, always the page. You smell it before you see it. The shelf of perfumes, lined like choirboys in neat rows of glass and gilded stoppers. Rose, clove, ambergris, orange blossom. Imported from Italy, France, the Indies. Each bottle is priced higher than your yearly keep, but they are not for your kind. They are for the women who pass through with silk gloves and heavy rings, who press lace to their mouths and speak of delicate sensitivities, who claim headaches when the gutters run high, and swear the stench of the common folk brings on their fainting spells. The merchant finally lifts his gaze. Yes? He asks, voice clipped and precise. You hand him the list. A small order, soap, a vial of oil, if there's any left from last week's shipment. Your mistress has guests coming. The house must not smell of last night's stew. He takes the list without touching your hand, marks it with a small nod, begins assembling the items. Behind him, the shelves whisper of wealth. Boxes lined in velvet, pins made of bone and pearl. Even the candles are scented. Rose and beeswax burning slowly, releasing sweetness into every crevice of the room. You realize after a moment that you can no longer smell yourself. The shop has swallowed you whole. The merchant speaks as he wraps the soap. This batch contains rosemary and lemon. From Seville. You nod as though that matters. He tucks the items into a parcel, ties it with twine, and sets it gently on the counter. His gloves remain spotless. The soap leaves a faint mark on your hand, a pale sheen where it touched. You reach for the parcel, but pause as a woman enters behind you. She is pale, powdered, lips the color of crushed cherries. Her shoes do not touch the mud. Her cloak smells of lavender crushed beneath glass. She does not look at you. She speaks directly to the merchant, her voice soft and laced with something sharp. I'll need more rose oil, she says. The new nursemaid smells of garlic. The merchant bows slightly and turns to his shelf. You stand, waiting, invisible again. The woman dabs her wrist with a silk cloth. You see it, The way her nose wrinkles, the way her fingers tremble just slightly, as if the filth of the world is always trying to reach her, even through silk and scent. The parcel in your hands suddenly feels heavier. The merchant returns, offering her a small vial. She inspects it, uncorks it, breathes. Better, she murmurs. She pays in silver, more than you will see in 3 seasons. As she leaves, you catch her glance just once. It's not cruelty, it's distance. You do not exist in her world. You are part of the city's hum, a body among bodies, a smell to be escaped. The merchant returns to his ledger. His glove lifts the next page. You step out into the cold. The street is louder now. You smell dung, meat, chimney smoke. The perfume clings to your hands like guilt. You rub them together, trying to scrub it off. As you walk, you pass a woman in rags cradling a child. The child coughs once, sharp and hollow. You pause, reach into the parcel, pull out the vial of oil. You hesitate only a moment. Then you unscrew the cap, pour a few drops onto a scrap of cloth, and press it gently into the woman's palm. She stares at you. It might help, you say. At night, she nods once and says nothing. You return to your mistress's house with the rest of the parcel. She does not notice one vial missing. Later, as you brush the hearth, you smell the rose oil still on your fingers. Not wealth, not cleanness, only the memory of a kindness neither of you could afford. The church is cold, not with the bite of wind or frost, but with the kind of chill that comes from stone left unwashed by light. You enter alone, your steps echoing down the nave, each one swallowed slowly by centuries of prayer. The scent is familiar, heavy, melted wax, damp wood, incense that never truly leaves. And something beneath it all, the scent of bodies too long cloaked in wool, of breath trapped in pews, of penitence rendered in sweat. The priest stands near the altar, head bowed over his missal, fingers moving across the pages as though caressing a wound. He doesn't look up when you enter, nor when you slip into the side pew, closest to the apse where the plaster crumbles like old bread. It is still early, the sky outside barely golden. But you've come for confession or something like it. You kneel, not because you must, but because you were taught to. He clears his throat. The sound is dry, cracked. You glance up. He is older than you remember, older than the plague, older than the last frost. His cassock is frayed at the cuffs, his beard more shadow than substance. But his voice, when it comes, is steady. What burdens you? You hesitate. What language is there for filth you cannot see? You speak of small things, a broken plate, harsh words, a loaf taken before the others. He listens, nods, then closes his book. You bathe? The question startles you. I wipe. With linen. Water's too cold now. He nods. We clean the body with cloth and ash, he says. But the soul, he lifts a finger, as if pointing to something only he can see. The soul is harder to wash. You nod slowly. This, you understand. He steps down from the altar and sits beside you, the bench groaning beneath his weight. I've seen men who never washed a day in their lives, he says, and yet they shone like saints at death. I've seen others, powdered and perfumed, rot from within. He lifts his hand, rough and spotted, and touches the wood of the pew. This, he says, has known more sin than your skin. You ask him if sin smells. He chuckles, not kindly, but not cruelly either. To those who've lived long enough, yes, pride stinks. So does cowardice. But the worst scent of all is shame. That clear. You tell him of the merchant's shop, of the woman with the rose oil, of the vial you gave away. He listens, doesn't interrupt. Then he sighs. The Lord washed feet, he says. Not faces, not clothes. Feet, dirt and all. The silence grows between you. Not heavy, not empty, just still. The priest stands again, walks to the stone basin near the entrance. He dips a cloth in holy water, not enough to soak, only to dampen, and brings it to you. Not for your body, he says. For your hands. Only your hand. You take it. The water is cold, but not biting. You wipe slowly, palms first, then fingers. It doesn't feel like cleansing. It feels like remembering. Sin, he says, watching you, isn't carried in the filth. It's carried in forgetting who we are. He blesses you in Latin, the words falling like ashes, soft and ancient. and returns to his missal. You leave the church slowly, the door groaning behind you. Outside, the town wakes. You smell bread baking, smoke rising, the stench of the gutters. Life, as it always is. You rub your hands together. The water's gone, but something remains. You hear him before you see him. A slosh, a grunt, the creak of iron wheels turning through muck. It is not yet dawn, and the street is hushed, but not silent. The city breathes in its sleep, and so does he, the night soil man. He moves beneath shuttered windows and between sleeping homes, dragging a cart with sides darkened by years of work. No one calls his name. No one speaks to him. They pretend not to see when day breaks, but in darkness he walks like a ghost with purpose, unseen, but never unneeded. You trail him tonight, boots barely lifted from the filth-slick road, wrapped tight against the damp. His cart is nearly full already, its contents thick with the weight of what the town has cast off, the waste of noblemen and bakers alike, night after night. There is no sorting, all rot is equal here. He stops at the back of an inn, where the privy spills into a deep wooden bucket. With practiced movement, he tips the waste into his cart, wipes the rim with a rag already too soaked to help, and moves on. You can smell it even from here. Not just the human stench, but the old wood of the cart, the clinging tang of iron, the vinegar-soaked rags tied around his face. You wonder what he smells when he goes home. If he notices any more, you ask if he needs help. He doesn't answer at first. Then, without turning, he mutters, "One bucket leaks." You find it at the next stop. A house just off the market lane, marked by a crooked shutter and a window stuffed with rags. The privy pail is cracked along the side, the waste seeping into the floor beneath. You fetch it anyway, carefully, lifting with both hands, holding your breath until your lungs ache. He watches silently as you pour it into the cart. The splash turns your stomach. You get used to it, he says at last. Mostly. He moves slowly, deliberately. His back curved not from age, but from years of lifting, emptying, hauling. His boots are wrapped in cloth. His gloves are fingerless, stained to the wrist. "Why do you do it?" you ask. He shrugs. "Someone must." You walk beside him for the next few stops. Each privy is worse than the last, some too full, others infested with flies, one barely covered with a cracked wooden lid. Still, he works without complaint, without pause. The cart groans beneath its burden. The street grows slicker with every pass. At one house, a window creaks open, and a woman's voice calls down, "Leave it." He nods once, already moving on. No words exchanged. He tells you, softly, that he earns a coin for each collection, more if he clears the barrels himself. Enough to eat, enough to sleep, but never enough to be seen. When the fever came, he says, "They called me a savior. Let me in through the front." He snorts. That lasted a week. You reach the edge of town as the first light brushes the sky. The cart rolls slower now, heavy and reeking. He turns down a lane you do not know, toward a pit lined with stone and ash. The night soil is dumped there, left to stew and steam, covered sometimes with lime, but more often with silence. You help him lift the latch. The stench blooms like a wound reopened. He empties the cart. The sound it makes is unlike any other. Afterward, he sits on a stone and removes the cloth from his face. His skin beneath is pale, his eyes ringed with grey. He lights a pipe, the smoke curling through the air like incense, trying to outmatch the stench and failing. You sit beside him. He doesn't speak for a long time. Then he says, "They wash the streets with rose water when the Queen comes." You nod. They think it hides the truth. You both watch the smoke rise. In the distance, a rooster crows. The city will soon wake. He stands, adjusts the straps of his cart, and begins the slow return. You do not follow. You remain by the pit, the smell clinging to your throat, to your eyes, to your skin. And for the first time you understand what it means to carry what others refuse to see. It rises slow and pale over the trees, the moon casting its silver over the cottages like a blessing whispered too softly to be believed. You walk quietly, careful not to disturb the silence stitched into the fields. The night is cool, the ground damp, and the wind carries with it the scent of crushed thyme and something faintly sweet, wood smoke perhaps, or distant blossoms. You are not alone. They move ahead of you, shadows in cloaks, each woman carrying a bundle, a kettle, or a smile she dares not show in daylight. Once a month, on the full moon, they gather. Not in defiance, but in remembering. Not for spectacle, but for survival. You follow them past the hedgerows, past the edge of town, where the trees begin to thicken and the path turns soft beneath your boots. A clearing opens before you, a ring of stones around a steaming pot. A low fire already lit, its flames tucked low to avoid notice. They call it the washing moon, a night when the veil is thin, when women cleanse not only hair but sorrow. The washerwoman is already there, sleeves rolled, stirring the pot with a stick longer than her arm. Her hands are red with herb and heat. She nods when she sees you. No words. Words are not needed tonight. You kneel by the circle. The bundles are unwrapped. Combs of horn, soap made from ash and lard, oil steeped with lavender, with rosemary, with nettles pulled by hand, 3 nights prior. No one brings perfume. No one brings powder. This is not a place for pretending. You dip your hands into the basin. The water is warm, not hot, but kind. The kind of warmth that makes your fingers forget the cold creeping in from the soil. You lift it to your scalp, soak the roots, the crown, the nape. Someone pours water gently over the back of your neck. You gasp, not from shock, but from the rare sensation of true washing. It has been weeks, perhaps more, and the water feels like memory. Beside you, a mother scrubs her daughter's braids. The girl laughs softly, and the sound is music in the dark. Another woman sings, a tune low and winding, one you know from cradle days, but cannot name. The song loops like thread pulled through linen, slow and sure, keeping the moment whole. The washerwoman adds herbs to the pot. Steam rises again, carrying the scent of elderflower and bonewort. You breathe it deep, feel it settle into your chest. You close your eyes. They speak of small things, of a new calf, born in the night, of a cousin, taken by the coughing sickness, of a husband who no longer notices when she cries. The talk is not bitter. It is quiet as if the moon listens and understands, though she cannot answer. One woman combs out her hair in long strokes. The strands glint like tarnished silver. She has not smiled in a year. Tonight, she does. You take your turn at the pot. The washerwoman hands you a cloth, already wet. You lather it with the paste they made, salt, vinegar, and crushed mint, and press it to your scalp. You scrub. You let it hurt. You let it heal. The water runs down your face, your neck, into your collar. It carries something away with it, not all of it, but enough. Afterward, your hair is rinsed with rainwater caught in barrels days ago. It is cold, but fresh. The women help you comb it out, careful fingers parting strands, untangling what the weeks have knotted. No one judges. They have all known this kind of filth. They have all known this kind of grace. One girl braids flowers into her mother's hair. Another lies back in the grass, hair fanned around her like a halo, her eyes closed. The moonlight kisses every cheek, every brow, as if to say, I see. The fire burns low. The water darkens. The song fades. You wring your hair dry with linen. Pat your arms. Tie your braid. You feel no cleaner than before, but you feel lifted, as if the weight has shifted slightly, as if the dirt is no longer a punishment, but a companion who's been asked kindly to wait outside. When the moon begins to dip, the women rise. The bundles are repacked. The ashes scattered, the fire covered. No one says goodbye. They walk back in silence. You walk too, damp braid clinging to your shoulder, heart full with something quieter than joy but deeper than peace. The village will never know what happened here, and that is as it should be. Inside, the room is hushed, not by silence, but by reverence. 3 women move slowly between the walls of linen and oak, their sleeves pinned high, their aprons clean. They do not speak. They do not cry. Their hands move with care, learned from long winters and longer grief. You are here to help. The corpse lies still on the plank, her face tilted slightly toward the fire as if she might turn to it one final time. She is old, the midwife's aunt, and her skin has already lost its warmth, though it retains the pale blush of days spent near the hearth. She does not look afraid. She looks relieved. The water is already heated in the copper pot. Steam swirls gently, kissed with lavender, rosemary and bay. This is not for healing. This is for departure. You roll up your sleeves. You clean her face, her hands, her feet. The cloth turns grey at first, then pale again. She was not filthy, but she was human, and all humans gather dust. The women sing as they work. Not hymns, not songs of glory, lullabies, quiet tunes meant for children in cradles, or the ones who will soon lie beneath the earth. You know the words. You hum with them. You rinse her hair with water, steeped in nettles. Comb it with an ivory tooth comb. Braid it loosely down her back, and tie it with ribbon from her niece's wedding dress. She never had children of her own, but she raised half the village. The youngest of the 3 women, a girl barely into her 12th year, brings the shroud. It is simple, white, folded neatly, edges hand-stitched. You unfold it gently, laying it over the clean body like a snowfall. You bind her hands with cloth, cross them over her chest. Slip a sprig of rosemary into the fold. They say rosemary is for remembrance, but here it is for parting. The priest arrives, not to pray, not yet, but to bless the oil. He murmurs in Latin, touches her forehead, her chest, her palms. Then he leaves again, his boots echoing down the stone path. You wrap the shroud tightly now, tucking the linen beneath her feet, pulling the edges smooth. She looks small this way, not diminished, only distant, like something you once touched, but cannot anymore. The washing is done. The women begin to tidy the room. The cloths are gathered, the herbs hung to dry again. The comb is wiped clean and returned to its box. The water is poured into the ground beyond the door, where the rosemary grows thickest. You watch it sink into the earth, still warm, still scented. You remain a moment longer. You think of your own mother, not yet dead, but close enough to shadow. You think of the dirt that gathers beneath fingernails, the lice that cling to scalps, the sores that bloom when no one can afford to rest. You think of the rot that does not smell, not of filth, but of fatigue. And then you think of this, of hands that clean not for show, but for mercy, of bodies prepared not for judgment, but for rest, of the rare moment in Tudor life when the skin is wiped, not hidden, when the stench of life is lifted gently from the flesh, not because it's shamed, but because it has ended. The bell tolls once. Outside, the cart waits. They will take her to the churchyard, bury her beneath frost and nettle and stone. But here, in this room, she is clean. And for once, that is not a lie. He is 10, perhaps 11, though hunger and soot have shaved the years from his bones and etched them into his eyes instead. You see him in the alley behind the baker's oven, crouched beside a pile of spent coals, drawing shapes into the ash with a stick too short to be useful. His fingers are blackened, his feet bare, his breath rises in thin puffs, uneven from the morning's labour. He is a chimney sweep's boy, small enough to fit where grown men cannot, into flues, between bricks, up twisting shafts, slick with soot and terror. His skin is a patchwork of old burns and new grime, his hair matted with creosote. He smells like a hearth long forgotten, and still he hums to himself, a tune with no melody but rhythm enough to fill the space where silence would otherwise settle. You greet him, and he startles, but only briefly. He is used to being seen and ignored. Your presence is a curiosity, not a threat. Do you sleep there? You ask, pointing to the heap of straw behind the baker's shed. He nods. Warm at night when the ovens bake. You crouch beside him. The ash dusts your knees. He resumes drawing a crooked circle, a flower maybe, or a sun with too many rays. I saw it once, he says suddenly. You wait. A bar of soap. Yellow, big as my hand. Smelled like apples. He pauses, eyes flicking upward, as if the memory still floats above him like steam. Lady dropped it from her satchel. Fell in the mud. I picked it up. You ask what he did with it. I kept it, he whispers. For days. You imagine it. The boy curled in straw, turning the bar over in his palms like treasure. Not to use. Just to hold. To believe in the idea of clean. Smelled it when I was cold. Like it could warm me. Like it could carry me somewhere. You ask where. He shrugs. A river. A bath. Something with steam. Something where the water don't bite. You look at his hands. the grime so deep it forms lines of its own, ridges of soot that time cannot scrub. He notices your gaze and tucks them beneath his knees. Sometimes I dream I wash, he says. The black peels off like bark. I climb into a barrel, and I come out new. He laughs then, but it's not cruel, just distant. You offer him a scrap of bread from your satchel. He takes it with the careful politeness of someone who's learned never to ask twice. He eats slowly, as if savouring the idea more than the food itself. You ask about the work. Suit hurts the chest, he says, and the eyes, but it pays. You ask about friends. He looks down. They go missing, fall, or don't wake up. He tells you of a boy named Sim. He dreamed of soap too, said he'd earn enough to buy one. Real fine, rose-scented. He draws another shape in the ash. A line. A mark. Sim's gone now. You ask if he's afraid. He shakes his head. Only when it's dark inside, when the flue twists and you can't find the top. You sit together in the ash, the chimney smoke rising faintly behind the bakery. The world moves on. Carts rattle past. Dogs bark. The smell of onions drifts from the inn. But here in this narrow space between warmth and waste, the boy dreams. You ask if you would use the soap, if he had one again. No, he says, grinning. I'd save it. Wrap it in cloth. Pretend it was mine. He folds his hands. Smell it when I felt dirty inside. You rise slowly. He stays, drawing shapes only he understands. You step away, then turn back. You reach into your coat and pull free a tiny cloth bundle. A sliver of lye soap wrapped in old linen. It's nothing. A remnant. You'd meant to use it for washing stockings. You offer it to him. He doesn't take it at first. Really? He asks. You nod. He unwraps it with care that borders on reverence, lifts it to his nose. Smells like lemon and something else. He doesn't know the word. Clean. He cradles it like a newborn thing. You leave him there with his soap, his ash, his small, unreachable hope. And long after the street has swallowed your steps, he dreams again. It begins as a whisper on the wind, soft, steady, unfamiliar. You feel it before you hear it, a subtle dampness in the air, the scent of earth, waking from a long, dry sleep. The villagers raise their heads as one, from windows, from fields, from doorways, darkened by years of watching skies that refuse to weep. A child shouts, a dog barks, someone laughs, not from joy, but from disbelief. It is raining, not a mist, not a drizzle, but true rain, thick drops falling in rhythm, splattering on rooftops, soaking the rushes in the lane, running in rivulets down the shutters long sealed against sun. You step out from beneath the overhang, tilt your head back, and let it find your skin. It is not warm, it is not gentle, but it is real. Around you, the world exhales. Clay gutters overflow with water, long denied. Barrels rattle as they fill, the once empty cisterns echoing like hollow bells now full of purpose. Children dance barefoot in the mud. Women lift their skirts and wade into the street. Men remove their caps. For a moment, Tudor England feels reborn, not clean, but rinsed. You walk the lanes as they transform. The dry dust of weeks past lifts in plumes, turning to paste beneath your shoes. The air is heavy with scents unsealed, damp wood, wet straw, the sour reawakening of old dung. It is not pleasant, not yet, but it is a beginning. You pass the butcher's stall, empty now, its meat already taken in from the sudden change. A cloth flutters in the doorway, soaked through, its once bright embroidery bleeding like bruises. A boy scrubs at his face with a handful of rain, eyes wide, mouth open to the sky. You remember the prayers, whispered into cold beds and empty cups. Let it rain, let the wells fill, let the sickness be washed away. And for a moment, you believe those prayers were heard. But it comes too fast. The ground, hardened by weeks of drought, cannot hold it. The rain pounds harder, turning alleys to rivers, yards to swamps. Chamber pots spill over, their contents swept down lanes, where children danced only hours ago. Cesspits overflow, leaking their poison into gutters meant only for runoff. The smell returns, sharper now, released from the crust of dry earth, made mobile by the water meant to save. You see it happen. A woman dips a bucket into the barrel, not knowing her thatch roof has wept more than rain, that ash and rat droppings have bled into the water. She gives the first ladle to her child. A baker's apprentice, cheeks flush with joy, drinks from a cupped palm, not seeing the film that floats atop the puddle. At the well, a crack has opened. Thin, jagged, leaking more than water. You watch it all, helpless. The priest walks through the churchyard, robes clinging to his shins, face lifted in gratitude. He does not see the grave soil loosening beneath him. The next day, the coughing begins again. Worse, swifter. Bellies cramp, eyes redden. Water that gave life now takes it back. You pass the water wife by the road. She watches the sky, her shawl soaked, her hair matted flat against her scalp. She says nothing at first, only gestures to the fields. It was too dry for too long, she says. Now it doesn't know how to be gentle. You ask her what to do. She shrugs. Boil everything. Pray if it helps. And don't trust what runs clear. The rain continues. It taps on your window all night, like a visitor too polite to leave. The roof leaks. Your shift clings to your back. You catch water in bowls and jugs, but none of it looks safe. You smell every drop before you drink. You dream of barrels filled with sorrow. By the third day, the streets stink again. Not with the slow rot of life lived in dirt, but with the sharp, immediate violence of illness. The rain has stirred it all, brought it to the surface, given it legs. You find the boy who dreamed of soap, curled beneath the baker's shed. He is burning with fever. You carry him inside, wrap him in dry cloth, offer broth made with water you boiled 3 times. Still he coughs. Still he dreams. You sit beside him and listen to the rain. It does not stop. It does not forgive. It only falls. The candle burns low in the corner, casting a circle of amber light upon the floor, where dust swirls in slow, aimless spirals. The old woman lies beneath a quilt stitched with her mother's hands, threadbare now, its edges frayed like winter grass. Her fingers rest upon her chest, folded in quiet repose, their skin thin and spotted, the nails pale as parchment. She does not move. Not yet. You sit beside her. The room is quiet, save for the soft creak of beams in the wind, and the occasional snap of cooling embers in the hearth. A basin of water waits on the table, still warm, steeped with thyme and marigold. A cloth rests beside it, unused. She had asked for soap. Not much, just a bar. Her son had written to say he would send it from London. Something scented, something smooth, something she might hold to her skin and remember what it meant to feel touched by care. Lavender, he'd said. Imported. You'll like it, but he never arrived. The roads were flooded. The carts overturned. Or maybe he was ill, or maybe the soap was too dear, and he chose food instead. You do not know. She waited, though, for days. Each morning she rose from her cot, shuffled to the window, looked down the road. Each evening she lit a candle, just in case the soap would come. She believed, because belief was cleaner than despair. You watch her chest rise once, pause, fall again. She is still alive, though barely. Her eyes open, just a sliver, just enough to find you in the gloom. She tries to speak, but only breath escapes. You lean in. It's all right, you whisper. You dampen the cloth, wring it gently. You touch it to her brow, her cheeks, her hands, her neck. She exhales, not a word, not a prayer, just a sound like settling dust. You tell her the soap is coming, that it's close, that you saw it with the tinker down the lane, that it smells of lavender. Just like she asked. She smiles, and it breaks your heart. You wipe her hands again, you comb her hair, you wrap the quilt tighter around her shoulders. She sleeps. This time, she does not stir again. The candle gutters low. The draft rattles the shutters. Outside, the rain has slowed. The village holds its breath between sickness and spring. You sit for a long while, your hands still damp, the cloth cooling in your lap. You imagine her dreaming of rivers, of steam, of water poured from silver ewers into marble basins, of soap that lathers easily, smells sweet, and carries no burden. Later, when the body is taken, the midwife nods in approval. She is clean, she says, dignified, ready. They wrap her in linen, slip rosemary into her hands, tie the shroud with blue thread, her favorite color. and carry her out beneath a sky just beginning to clear. You remain. You tidy the room. You rinse the cloth. You fold the quilt. And you light the candle again. Not because she needs it now, but because hope, like soap, is a small thing. And sometimes it arrives late. Sometimes not at all. But sometimes we light the candle anyway. As the last embers fade from this forgotten story, I hope it leaves a glow in your own heart. Subscribe if you wish to walk again through the silent pages of history, and share this tale if it stirred something quiet in you. What part of this story stayed with you the most? As the rushes rot and the last candle fades, I thank you for walking with me through the shadowed halls of history. If these forgotten truths moved something within you, stay, subscribe, and return whenever you wish to wander again, through grime, memory, and time. What part of this story stayed with you the most? The silence of the washing moon, or the footsteps of the night soil man? Would you have endured a world that feared water more than filth?